love the music. In fact, we still have serenades they call harana. When a ruler man has an eye on a young girl, he plays the guitar under her. What's so funny is sometimes the servants of the house don't like the noise, so they throw water. Whenever I play piano now, I remember the songs. I don't play well, but I like to hear them. We used to dance together, but I can't do it anymore. So but I like to hear people sing. Here, there's a grand piano downstairs. I play every day at 6:30 because you know when you grow old, your hand gets kind of stiff. So that's my good exercise that I do. And besides, I like to listen to what I play. Not very good, but because my hand can't run anymore, but it's a good feeling to be able to play it. My full name is Norbe Birosel Boettcher. My middle name is Birosel because that's the name of my father. I was named after my grandmother, whose name was Norberta, and she was named after Saint Norbert. A long time ago in Philippines, people were named after saints. So all we had to do was look at the calendar, and then you pick the name. Like everybody was born in Christmas was Jesus or Jesusita. My mother, when she used to call me Norbing. She made that up. My father's name was Dionisio, and my mother's name was Filomena. As you know, Filomena is the name of a saint, and so she was named after Saint Filomena. Dionisio, I think, was a name given to him by his parents. They were Ilocanos. They were born in the northern part of Philippines, close to the China Sea. It is known in history that there were a lot of Chinese pirates that used to go by the China Sea. My father looks Chinese. His people were quite, lighter skinned. But on my mother's side, most of the women have the higher noses because, her great-grandfather was from Spain. Her great-grandfather's name was Hernandez. So now that I'm here in the United States, I have gathered all my relatives who belong to that clan. And one of my cousins told me that now we know each other because in Philippines, if you're walking in the street and you have a relative, even a distant relative come by and you don't know who that they are, it's a tragedy to Filipinos not to know their own blood relations. My grandparents' last name was Quaresma. Strangely enough, my great-grandfather met the Quaresma families and the Hernandez. So all of the descendants are double related, and we look alike quite a bit. My grandmother, Norberta, was married to a Quaresma. Her sister was married to a Quaresma. So there was these ties of the Hernandez Quaresma family. And most of us have left the Philippines, have traveled quite a bit, and we still retain close ties to each other. Yeah, some have moved to Canada and Australia even, and we have relatives in Europe too. Like my favorite cousin lives in Spain, so I used to go to stay with him quite a bit. The first one is Ildefonsa. She was named after my mother's first cousin. And then I'm next. And then a boy, Dionisio Jr., Sylvia, a girl, Patricia, another girl, and the twin boys, Roger and Joel. Roger and Joel were named after professors of my father at University of California. Roger Adams and Joel Hildebrand. My sister Patricia was named after my father's father, Patricio. I would say that I'm quite proud of my family with the training that we have. I told Mother one day, why is it that most of our relatives kind of sometimes disagree with each other? She said it's because of the mixed blood. Yeah, we have Chinese, we have Spanish ancestry, and then my nephew converted to Muslim, and so we have relatives that are Muslims, and some of my cousins married Jewish people, you know, so it's quite a chop suey, I call them. Yeah, we were all born in Philippines. Yeah, my mother didn't want to move to United States when my father was in the United States. He worked for Monsanto. My mother wanted to live in Philippines. She didn't want to be away from her family since she was the oldest. She wanted to be near her sisters and brother because they were younger than her. So my dad moved back to Philippines from the States. He told me one day that he wanted to send his children to University of Iowa because he liked the school a lot. So we were sent here. My oldest sister took chemistry, I took chemistry. The next sister, the brother took, he didn't graduate from college because he married too young, but he was enrolled at University of Iowa too and was taking liberal arts. And then the next sister is a gifted painter, yeah, Patricia. She was the one who graduated in high school from University of Iowa. And then the boys, the younger twin boy, Roger, went to University of California and he majored in genetics. He eventually spent the rest of his life in international politics. And he went to the first meeting in Rio de Janeiro as a delegate. He was keen on the environment, but he taught at Ateneo de Manila. He said he used to get mad at his students in Ateneo. He told me one day, he said, you know, when the weather is warm, students are lazy. They don't want to study, they're too comfortable and they feel heat. He said that's the reason why most of the advances have been in the colder countries. I was born in Manila, Philippines, 1932, June 6. That was the middle of the monsoon season, so it rained a lot. We lived in Pasay, near the international airport. See, my father was a professor at the university, and the president asked all his faculty members to move there since it was a good place, not too far from the university. And then my parents moved to Makati, and then Quezon City. My mother used to get rice from the province, from her property that's inherited. The way they farm in Philippines is the owner doesn't do anything. The farmers do it for him. But he gives them land to fix their houses. That's the way it's done. And the children, if they want to learn a trade in Philippines, they hire themselves as household help. That's how we got our servants in Philippines. My mother would pay the tuition for the girl to learn how to fix hair or sew. And then when they'd be done, their younger sister would come over because that's the only way they can make better their lives. The country folk were considered backward and the city folk were supposed to be advanced. That's not true. But that's the way it was. I didn't like it at all. My favorite childhood memory is being with my family, with my father lecturing to us, because before the lectures, the children would be fighting each other, and all of a sudden it's quiet. We all gather in front, and all the children are watching. Us older ones would stand at the back, and the younger ones would be in front, and they would listen intently to Dad. And I thought that was a beautiful thing too. And another thing that I remember is singing around, being gathered around the piano, singing. We didn't have television when we were growing up, so we made our own entertainment. I think it's good that way. My forebears, my great-grandfather was from Spain, so they say that's family history. But he married a half Philippine Spanish girl. In Philippines, private schools are a little more equipped than public schools for a lot of things. We were sent to private schools. The boys went to Ateneo de Manila, Letran, La Salle. The girls went to St. Assumption, Scholastica, and women's. We went through the the dining hall, and I asked my friends who were from her same town, let's go and sit down and talk to Imelda. And she said, what for? And I was so surprised. But in Philippines, what I didn't like was the separation of the rich and the poor. I went to a school that was for rich kids, and I would see kids being chauffeured by their chauffeur in limousines every day. When my mother married a poorer person, his relatives were kind of worried that he wouldn't be accepted. Because he had a doctorate, he had a possibility. It was lovely because we were all together, but then the war came, and we lived through the World War II in Philippines. So there wasn't not enough food. But my father and mother planted vegetables and stuff, and we couldn't get the rice. It was sad because my parents thought that to grow up, you have to have enough food in your stomach. So my father, being a chemist, tried his best to have the right sustenance for his kid. It was difficult to go to the grocery store or the market because the Japanese were all around, especially when it was heated fighting. And we lived near the airport. That's kind of scary. But we lived through the times, but we were all together. To this very day, I don't like doors blocked because we had to make a safe exit. Can fall down and trip. And for the longest time, I was taught how to put my finger in my mouth because your eardrums can get hurt from the loud noise. But strangely enough, we lived through it. But the Japanese were defeated right on time. Otherwise, it would have been a disaster because the Japanese soldiers had already lined the whole city with oil cans, gasoline cans that were supposed to set us on fire. To this very day, I don't understand why MacArthur is vilified. But I found out that he and the President of the United States had a sort of personality clash. You see, MacArthur was quite arrogant, but we still loved him because he understood us. having been raised in Philippines, his father was also a general. And he promised that he would return, and he returned. So to this very day, the Filipinos revere him. You know what war does to people, though? They make them more religious. But when war is over, then they forget because they're scared. They like to see somebody taking care of them. But when it's over, then they revert. The thing that I found out that was scary was that I found out during the war that people like to take things that aren't theirs. The looting, I couldn't understand that. But the strange, though, is that war makes people into what they're not, and it's wrong. I learned how to speak Japanese when I was a little child. But strangely enough, the Japanese soldiers weren't very nice to Filipinos, especially when they found out we were pro-American. I love the Japanese culture, but I don't understand how they could be so cruel in the war. It was probably what they were told to do. People become inhuman during war, and that's what I don't like about it. I wish it would be abolished. War isn't a good place for children to grow up. It's difficult. You look at your parents and they're worried. You try not to be afraid, but fright is all around you. My parents were quite religious, especially my father. He always prayed to God that we would be safe. And we did. We were okay. Every evening when he prayed for America because he said, "Oh, you children don't understand. It's so cold in the winter. If the bombs will drop in Iowa, for example," he said, the people would freeze to death. There wouldn't be any heat. So we asked him, "How cold is it?" He said, "Put your hand in the freezer." And we said, "That cold?" "Yes, it's that cold." He remembered his student days walking through the campus, crossing the river because he lived across the river and had to go to the other side of the bridge. Oh my gosh. He was in the chemistry department. But strangely enough, when Father came to the United States, he went to New York. He wanted to be a Protestant minister. Can you imagine that? And one day, his professor went to him and said, "Birosel, you are gifted in science. You shouldn't become a minister." But my father said, "I want to help people." He said, "You can still help people, but it would be a shame if you don't develop your talent." So Father always told us that everybody should develop their talents, but they should know what their talents are, because that is God-given. So my father became a chemist. He came to University of Iowa because he was supposed to go to Caltech, but his professor he wanted to work under had a sabbatical, and he went to University of Iowa, so my dad followed him. He loved Iowa. He liked the people. He graduated around 1926, 7, something like that. And there were only 2 who graduated with their doctorates. And one of them was Ben Peterson, who was the first president of Coe College, where I found a job later. It was so strange. He and Dr. Peterson were the only 2 graduates that year. He graduated in chemistry. Father, thinking about helping his people, he devoted his time to doing research on coconuts. because the Philippines' biggest export is coconut. So he had several patents, and he gave it away for the good of his people. His most notable invention was stable coconut oil, which he freeze-dried, because he said in nature there's an inherent preservative, but a scientist should be able to see that. And he showed me when I was a little child, he showed me a bottle of a sample he did, and it was pretty old. Was 5 years old and was still not rancid. My parents decided that all of us were going to have a chance to go to University of Iowa. My oldest sister, who died last year, was the first one, Ilde, the one who moved to Brazil. And then I was next, and then a brother came, and then 2 younger sisters. The younger sister was quite a bit younger than us, so she finished high school there. And I was really surprised that she was admitted to take private art lessons with one of the professors at Iowa. The love of art and music runs in her family. My mother sang quite well. She told us that my grandmother used to say, it's good for girls especially to take music so that they don't just, their conversations won't be very boring. They will know how to spend their time instead of foolish things. If they know an instrument, so they want to get better at it. My mother, strangely enough, she wanted to take engineering, but at the time she started in college in the early 1900s, women weren't allowed. And the reason was they had to have a separate tent for her when they went on field trips. Her first cousin married the president of university, and he said, why don't you take education instead? You have all these books in the house that you can read to. So mother decided to be a teacher of mathematics. She majored in math, and finally at University of Iowa, she got her master's degree, and she was able to teach statistics at University of the East. All the time she was in Philippines, she taught high school math. One day my sister said, could you please teach my grandson? So it was in Brazil. And I asked her later, how is he, Mom? She said, no, I don't think, I don't think he'll make a good. And the same thing with my brother. My father was very displeased because my brother next to me wasn't good at all in math, so he couldn't major in the sciences. But you know, the way I look at it, everybody is gifted with something that they have to choose to develop. But father, when we were little, he used to give lectures on acid-base titration. He would have this beaker, he'd put acid, and then he said, now it's pink. Why is it pink? Well, Dad, it's because it's acidic. And all of us had to listen to him, and that's how we were taught. When my father had grandchildren, great-grandchildren, he wanted them to take science. And one of the boys said, I'm sorry, Grandpa, but I won't major in chemistry. I like physics better. And 2 of his grandchildren dedicated their dissertations to him because he talked to them when they were little. One was a chem engineer and the other one was a physicist. I didn't feel I was grown up enough when I was even in my 40s. I still thought, should I ask my mother if I'm doing things right? I think now that I'm grown and my parents are dead, I am my own parent because they taught me. And I sort of feel the loss of their presence, but at least they are, I listen to what they said. They're sort of censors and kind of uncomfortable sometimes, but in the long run, I think they were wise enough. Like Father used to say, supper is a very important time to be all together. In fact, he was so strict that whoever was late for supper time wouldn't be able to eat at all. And the twin boys, my brothers, would be late because they'd be playing outside. And many a time, Joel, especially the younger one, he didn't eat, but the servants gave him food after. I came here, I think it was 1954. See, I was too young to get the board exam for chemists because I finished chemistry there. So my father told us that my mother and me should come to the United States because my oldest sister was going to be married to a boy from Brazil, but he couldn't go. So he sent my mother and me, and they figured out that we may just as well go to graduate school. So both of us went to grad school. My major was chemistry. I took organic, University of Iowa. Oh, Bob, I met him at the University of Iowa in University Hall. We had a Philippine festival. We had Santa Cruzan, and he stayed for that. And then finally, he talked to me, and I just, took it for granted. And lo and behold, I was in the sciences and he was in art, and it's quite different. But being the way I was raised, being surrounded by science and art, it wasn't really difficult. When we decided to get married, my mother was a little worried because she knows that people in the arts have a hard time. Before she left to go home to Philippines, she asked one of her good American friends to find out more about Bob because she didn't stay too long. And the report of her friend probably was okay. When Bob met my father for the first time, he was taken aback because all my father asked him is, "Do you believe in God?" I said, "Bob, the reason he asked that was that he trained us children to go to college regardless of sex, that we would be able to support ourselves, that if we had believed in a supreme being, that we'd be okay," which is true. I think so. Money comes after. It's what you have in your heart and mind that's important. I think we met about 1957, something like that. I was almost done with school. I decided not to get my doctorate. I felt that I had learned enough, and I was quite confident that I knew what to do. I wasn't going to be what you call a dedicated scientist. I wanted to be able to taste life in my own terms without dedicating myself to something bigger than me, So that's what I did. We got married in 1961 in California after I found my first job there. Life has been very good. I am an Iowa now. I became a citizen 1976. Yeah, there was a big to-do about 1976. I didn't want to be a citizen at once because I felt that I was setting my background a little bit away. In fact, when I got my citizenship, all the citizens had to stand up to abjure their point of origin, that we should owe allegiance to the country, not to the country of our birth. And all of us cried. I remember that. It was just a form. I think the United States wanted to be sure that, we wouldn't go against them at all. But it was not a very good question for us to swear to. Nowadays, you can have double citizenship. My sister and one brother have double citizenship. I think that's good, but I didn't apply it. My heart is here. I live in Iowa. I'm an Iowan, and I'm proud of it. I like the people. I like to live here now because people are what they are. They don't pretend. Other places I've been to, not too good. Here, they're just ordinary people who did their best to raise their families, and that's the kind of people I want to be surrounded with. It's okay to be intellectual, but I think sometimes intellectuals forget that the other people aren't like them. We're all human beings. We should help each other. I raised one child, Heidi, and as soon as she was old enough to understand, I brought her to the museum, brought her around and let her just soak in the atmosphere, not talking too much, because I think a child, when left alone, understands what's around them. You surround the child with things that they will treasure. You don't have to say much of anything, just let them be. She remembers that it was an important day. And she told me later, I remember that occasion when you brought me to the museum. I was quiet and I liked what I saw. And strangely enough, when I would bring her shopping, she would say, "Mama, don't buy that dress, it's a mommy dress." So I would say, "What do you mean by mommy dress?" She said, "I don't know, it just doesn't seem right." Like she said, she'd show me combinations of colors. I think a child is born with a gift. You don't even know it's there. She put salmon and violet together, salmon and green. How would she know that it's born in her? When Heidi was in grad school, her professor wanted her to take his seat at the professorship. But since her father complained about teaching at Linmar, he taught junior high kids. She didn't want to have anything to do with teaching. So she went to California and was a designer. And now she's back to teaching in San Francisco. Little children. This is Heidi's latest work. It's in a hotel in San Luis Obispo area. And she gave it away. She didn't get money. You know how artists are, they don't think about money. Her girlfriend owns a bed and breakfast. It's a beautiful place. And it's in the lobby. My next book that I'm publishing will have Heidi's painting. I asked my husband, but he said he can't do work anymore because his eyes. Let my daughter make it. That's why she illustrated the first book. I had to ask him first because, you have to acknowledge the older person before the younger one. I'm quite proud of my family. I do not know how to paint, but I sketch a little bit. Some of my short poems, I do pencil sketches. When I was a child, I saw the picture of Alhambra. And when I got older and had a job, I went to Spain to see the Alhambra. It was the last place where the Moors had their kingdom. See, Spain a long time ago was different kingdoms. And to me, that place that I imagined is quite a bit like what I thought it would be. I used to travel quite a bit. I think that traveling makes a person realize that there's a commonality of all people. And what worries me is sometimes there are wars, and mostly because of greed. And when it bothers me, that's when I write. I've written quite a few things about my feelings that I have, and writing helps me dispel it, yeah. Well, I traveled quite a bit in the United States. My sister had a condo in Manhattan, New York. So we went there for opera season in February and listened to the opera and went to the Broadway shows. And I also went to Spain quite a bit because of my cousin. I brought my daughter on her first trip when she was still a junior at University of Iowa. And we were a little worried that she didn't respond too much. We thought that she'd be so excited. But you know what so happened after? She had a one-man show at University of Iowa showing what she saw in Europe. But her first trip to Europe, they had a strike at the Louvre. And she sat down and she cried. I said, Heidi, I'll bring you here again someday. And I did. And I'm so glad that, and now she's engaged to a guy from France. She's in California right now, yeah. But she spent 3 to 4 years in Germany. She was invited to be part of an art exhibit, and she stayed on. And we were glad because on her father's side, they're German and Swiss combinations. She was named Heidi because her grandmother's from Switzerland. My daughter doesn't own a TV set. She doesn't want to. My husband gets mad because he doesn't read the newspaper. But she doesn't want to. And I leave her alone. It's her thing. When you have children, you're not attached to your children. They cannot be exactly what you are. You have to leave them away. In fact, the other cultures feel that children are just transient human beings that you have for a while and you let them go. Let them be, yeah. I was asked by one of my friends why her daughter doesn't want to go to college. I said, leave her alone. Let her work, and she'll find out what she wants to do later. My first job as a chemist was quite surprising because I felt like I was having so much fun that why should I get paid for it? Because strangely enough, in the United States, people who can understand science and math are paid more than other people. I don't think that's fair. We are just born that way. It's not that they cannot take, other people cannot take what we took. Granted, the courses in science are quite difficult. You sweat inside, even if you're bright, because there's so many things that you cannot see that you have to believe in. In fact, I think science is kind of like a religion. You do not see an atom, but you know it's there. The only thing that's difficult about being involved in science is that the progress of learning is slow because the human mind is not smart enough to know anything at once. It has to be gradual. Right now, I'm involved in writing an article about artificial intelligence, which is bothering a lot of people. I don't think we should sweat too much about it, but I think that it is a new thing that has to be dealt with. A lot of my friends are thinking very much about losing their jobs. I don't think they'll lose their jobs. The only thing is this: robotics have to be fed information. The people that will be at fault if something bad happens are the people who understand how to provide information. For example, a creative mind thinks this way: a robot can know its thought processes, but it cannot think for itself. It has to take that mind further. There's too much drudgery in ordinary jobs. People work too long hours. I think artificial intelligence will help if it's taken humanly, not by people who want to gain. Sure, there will be jobs that will be lost. I can see in the future, the 21st or the 23rd century, people not driving their cars, just sitting in it and allowing the car to bring them to their destination. Maybe working instead of 5 days a week, maybe even 3. Because life is too precious. We are losing a lot of people who die before their time. It's because of the drudgery. Artificial intelligence will solve a little bit about the problem, but it has to take the people behind who understand it, do it that way. We are humans. We can use robots to do what we don't want to do, to enhance our lives, and it should be that way. When I was first starting school, they said it was impossible to go to outer space, but now it's possible. Artificial intelligence is artificial. It's not real intelligence. Intelligence comes from humans, not from machines. You have to feed the machines. And people get scared because of that. I don't think that's right at all. That's my slant. I loved teaching. It was the best job that I had. And I also did research with a professor that to me was the best boss I had. I realize now that the best people to work with are those that are already have achieved something. Otherwise, the person you work with is in competition with you. And Dr. Pennington, my first boss, was wonderful because he asked my opinion how we should approach the research next. None of my bosses ever did that. In fact, as a woman, I was totally disregarded. They would have meetings without me inviting me. That's the way it is in the United States. What I would like to do before I die is to have equal pay for women. I was paid 75 cents to the dollar. If I were to get the 25 cents, multiplied by the number of years that I worked, I could give that money to charity. But it's not so. Men still rule everything. And I can see why. Because us women were born to be nurturers, that we look at our jobs as something to add to ourselves, but not as important as it is to men. Like one of my friends one time interviewed for somebody he would hire. He hired a woman because she was pregnant. And he knew that she would have to stay at home to raise the child after. and her mind would be in nurturing the child. It's a fact of life. I taught at Coe about 4 years, and the reason why I moved is when mother moved to Brazil, I needed more money for traveling because I was only working part-time at Coe, but I miss the students. I like the idea of helping people grow in their profession. I had the nurses they were then at St. Luke's, and I went to every nursing ceremony. And some of my students were quite bright. And one of them went to Oxford University for scholarship on a Rhodes Scholars, a black boy. When he came to the United States for vacation, he stayed with me. And he told me all about the strangeness of and the pomp and ceremony of Oxford. He said, do you know that when we had the opening day of classes, all the faculty are dressed in full regalia, and we're all assembled in this big hall. And we have to stay put for more than 2 hours, and there are always American students going to the Julu. He said, I don't know about these British, they know how to save themselves. They just disappear and they come back. And he said his first night in the dormitory, English person said, sir, can I draw your bath now? He, a black man from Kentucky, being served by a white person because he was in Oxford, to him was amazing. And I was really, really happy that he decided to go to apply for the Rhodes Scholar. At first, he didn't want to do it. And I had another student who applied there too, but got his master's and then got his PhD later at Stanford University. And he got involved in the environmental class too, this other guy. But the first one was more important to me because I was young. And for a student to want to come to see me after having that wonderful experience in Oxford was amazing. And that was my only way of finding out how it was in Oxford. It's really quite a tradition in England, and it's quite prestigious to be a Rhodes Scholar. When he applied for it, he said, should I? And I said, why not? There's no harm in trying. He said, but most of the Americans who apply for the Rhodes Scholar usually are good athletes. He said, I don't think so. You just try and apply. And he was admitted at once. It was amazing. And to be a teacher, to influence young minds, I think even in a small way, is quite amazing because you are part of their growing. He told me one day when he was a senior, I don't like it here anymore at Coe College. I said, you know why, Daryl? It's because you have advanced. Your professors have stayed the same. You have taken what you came here for and you have to move on. And that's the reason for education. You progress and you become better than your own advisors. But you don't say anything against them because they are what they are and you are destined for something different. To me, the arts make persons more human because they get from within. In science, you use your mind, but in science, you actually use your imagination and your mind at the same time. I couldn't have done research in science that was published on chlorophyll if I didn't visualize what would happen to it when it would have reactions and stuff. To me, writing is an outlet, and it's a beautiful way of expressing what one feels inside. A lot of things bother me that's going on right now, and when I feel sad, that's when I write. To me, you can exist, but to live takes a lot of imagination. If the days get a little bit bad, they're not the same. Some days are good, some days are bad. When you grow old, your body gets old, but your mind still's fresh. In fact, I hope most people feel that way. I write in all genres. In fact, I had a play that was presented in Long Beach. The name of the play was Azalea. And the reason why it was named Azalea was because that's the name that a girl chose when she was pulled out of a cast of people who worked in the background to be the lead star in a play. It's a story about a girl who had wanted to achieve sort of some kind of recognition in Broadway. And she came from a family that had just had simple means, just for her to raise. In fact, it was scary. One thing about writing plays is that if it doesn't work with the audience, the first act, you're done for. The people who read your poems or your stories or your essays take what they want out of it. It's out of your hands. You just give it to them. It's the interpretation, individual interpretation that's different. All great books remain great because people see something in them. The author is just a way to present an idea to other people. It's his creativity that makes it possible. But it's the people who read that make it happen. All the great books that I have read are that way. It's what I get out of it. For example, I don't understand William Faulkner. And it's because he's from the South and it's too alien for me. And I think most people are that way. You get what you want out of it. So far, I've written 2 birthday books for my mom. The first one, I was hesitant to give to her, but then she liked what I wrote, especially a poem that I wrote when I was quite a bit, I think I was in my 20s, about friends. And so this is the first book I gave to her. It's called Reflections. To write something is daring. It's kind of like you go beyond yourself. You do not really want to show what you feel because it's so personal, but you have to do it. In fact, I wrote a poem one time when I was at Coe College that something is prodding you to say something. And I think that something is important. It's beyond your control. So you have to give it out. It's not because you want to be noticed. It's because it's part of you that wants to say something. Saying it frees you of it. In science, when I wrote my research, it was a good feeling that it would be done, but it was just part of my brain. not my whole being. With something creative, it's all your whole being that you're giving away. In fact, it's the same way when you play the piano. It's like you take off all your clothes and you bury yourself. That is, if you do it the right way. So I have admiration for artists who do it because it's quite daring. It's making yourself vulnerable. And when you're vulnerable, you don't want that to happen, but you have to do it. It's the only way that human beings connect with each other, with what we can give to each other. Because everybody has different thoughts and different insights. My next book is going to be about giving to others what one really is supposed to. It is wrong for people not to develop it because it was given to them. And it is right for them to share it. That's it. That's all there is to it. It's the sharing. It's part what we are born to be alive. This one here are stuff that I wrote recently, within the past, maybe past 10 years. And I call it the reason to be alive. Raison d'être. That's in French. The rest of my life from this day on will be of connection, deep from the core, free-flowing, disembodied, non-words dropping, eddying, pure sounds without contrivance. Faces, bodies are mere skeletons of the essence. Eyes are the reflection of oneself. I give it to everybody. It's up to you to take what I give. That's all. I don't want to force it on anyone. And it's what I've gone through and what I feel deeply about is all. I was really happy after the first performance of my play Azalea. I was talking to a lot of people at the same time, and I felt an elderly woman behind me waiting for her chance to speak. All she did was she took both my hands and she said, "Thank you," and disappeared. That to me was the best gift that I had. It's not because people stayed to listen to the whole play, but because she thought it fitting to say thank you. And I was happy. I hope that happens to every creator. It's a good feeling. And I will continue to write as long as I live. When I feel bad, I want to eat our food. And one of my girlfriends told me, she said, "Have you ever tasted anything without rice? It tastes terrible. You have to have rice." But she said in the United States, they always say that rice makes you fat. For 2 months, she did away without rice, and she said it was terrible. My sister from Brazil, she told me one day, "Mama," my mother, cooks with her love. When you cook with your love, the food tastes better. Yeah. That's the way I think most Philippine mothers do. And they always have their own way of doing it. Like one of the younger girls told me that the way people make pancit is different. Everybody. She knows it was done by somebody else. The way I cook pancit is different because I have very little noodles. I have a lot of filling. She said most of the people put just on top. I like to have more vegetables and chicken and shrimp especially. Anyway, see, sometimes you're torn between cultures. I remember one time Carlos P. Romulo, when he retired from the presidency of United Nations, came over to the University of Iowa, and he told of us, gathering of Philippine students, he said, choose what's good about America, but retain your Philippine ways. Do not forget what you were raised with. For example, we revere older people. We do the mano. All of us children, grandchildren would line up to get blessings from my grandfather. Now that I'm in my 90s, the children of my friends in Iowa come to me. They wait for me to bless them, which is a good feeling. I hope that that custom will be retained. I think that's a beautiful way of revering people who are older, that you can learn from them, yeah. Mm-hmm.